I don't think I've ever felt so conflicted after consuming a Sonic product as I have with Knuckles, a 6-part TV spin-off series set in the Sonic cinematic universe. Set after the events of Sonic 2 and before the upcoming Sonic 3, the show tells the story of a bored and directionless Knuckles the Echidna, a lifelong warrior, struggling to adapt to a peaceful life on Earth now that the villainous Dr. Ivo Robotnik has been defeated. But it isn't long before he finds new purpose, as he agrees to help the well-meaning but incompetent police officer Wade Whipple on his quest to compete in and win a bowling tournament, and generally be less of a doofus. What follows is 6 episodes of some of the weirdest Sonic material ever produced, as the two embark on a cross-country road trip to a bowling tournament, while being pursued by rogue gun agents and a bounty hunter. During our time with the duo, we learn more of Knuckles' backstories through a rock opera, more on this in a bit, we meet the rest of the Whipple family, and we eventually end up with a climax that is as much of an underdog sports story as anything else. So let's dive into what I felt worked, what didn't, and what Paramount should learn from this moving forward, with my review of Knuckles. Before we begin, please like the video if you enjoy it, and subscribe if you're new here for high-quality evergreen Sonic and Sega videos. Oh, and apologies for using a lot of game footage in this review. Paramount can be a pain in the arse when it comes to copyright claiming YouTube videos. So that's why. Right, on with the review. Spoilers throughout. First, I'll say that visually, this show felt consistent with the Sonic movies. For the most part, there was no noticeable downgrade in quality when the CGI characters were on screen. The whole show is actually really nicely shot and lit for most part. The CG looks great and has a cinematic feel. Off the top of my head, the Buyer's Factory, the Rock Opera, and the Ice Cap Resort raid all looked stunning. But there were a few times, such as the meal at Wade's house, which we'll get into later, where the show felt cheaper and the shots looked quite flat. But how did Paramount pull off this movie quality look with a lower budget, you may be wondering? The answer is simple. By filling the show with an abundance of human characters and sidelining Knuckles in favor of a story that focuses on Wade first and foremost. It still felt like a Knuckles show to me overall, but there was one point in particular, I think it was episode 5, where I turned to my girlfriend and said, "Where the hell is Knuckles?" To which she responded, "I don't know. I figured the next scene was going to be him at the mascot convention, but it never happened." As it turns out, he was just in his hotel room off camera in that episode watching TV. Really. So overall, Knuckles looks nice, but let's talk about this abundance of humans for a moment. There are loads of them. And full disclosure, I am someone who likes the movie universe and the human characters they brought in. Tom, Maddie, Wade, Rachel, Olive Garden Guy, Agent Stone, the absolute GOAT, and so on. Most of the movie's human characters are genuinely likable, funny, or both. IMO. So how do the humans in this show stack up? Let's talk the main villains first. The 2 rogue gun agents are pretty cool. Kid Cudi in particular seems to be having an absolute blast in this role. And the female agent, who it is revealed has gone rogue because she thinks Gun are too soft on Sonic and the gang, is a suitably nasty bugger, which makes her come across as a genuine threat. With a big asterisk that I will come back to in a moment on that point. Then there's the buyer. He's a bloke who used to work for Robotnik and is now developing weapons based off his tech. I think it was to sell them on the black market. He wants to track down Knuckles to drain his power to use in even more weaponry. These are solid concepts for villains that tie nicely into the previous movies, but I wish the gun agents could have, I don't know, used a ring portal to bring Fang the Hunter or another villain from Sonic's world onto their team to help them in their fight. It would just help to make the whole thing feel a bit more Sonic-y. Then there's the semi-villain bounty hunter stroke Wade's former bowling teammate and friend character, Jack Sinclair, played by Julian Barrett from The Mighty Boosh. Jack is completely ridiculous and very entertaining. I got so many laughs from this character during the run of the show, but this also kind of becomes a problem, and I'll bring up that previously mentioned asterisk now. Because so many of the characters in this show are incredibly silly and cartoonish, they don't really feel like real people. And because of this, it often doesn't feel like there's really anything at stake because it's all just silly nonsense. Even the extras are just as ridiculous as the core cast at times. For example, when Wade and Jack face off in a bizarre joust, a nearby postman, who doesn't question any of this silliness unfolding in front of him, shoots a flare into the sky which spells out the word "Go." At an earlier point in the story, Jack Sinclair hands Wade a business card in which the picture on the card begins to taunt Wade. It's like something you'd expect to see in Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't laughing at all of this. I'm thinking back to the movies, and indeed, there are definitely silly moments and characters like this in those too. For example, all the stuff in the Siberian Lodge and the dance-off sequence in Sonic 2. But these are contrasted with grounded family moments with Sonic, Tom, and Maddie that the audience can relate to. And it's because of these family moments, and the characters who play it straight and actually act like real people, that it feels like the real world and that the characters are fighting for something. In Knuckles, it's mostly just all nonsense, all of the time. I guess Wade's family are the ones who are supposed to ground the series, but aside from his likable mother, the Whipple family are completely ridiculous too. His estranged father, Pistol Pete, and sister Wanda are, surprise surprise, ridiculous, cartoonish characters, with the latter in particular being so annoying and unlikable, especially early on, that it baffles me how the character made it to the final cut of the show. Wade and Wanda are supposed to have a squabbling brother and sister dynamic, but it comes off as weird when the characters are in their 40s and there's no setup for them behaving in this way. I feel like they wanted to go for a stepbrothers vibe, but without giving any background or reason for them being like this other than Wanda is an unlikable asshole. Rounding out the core cast of humans is the real focus of the story. Wade, a bumbling idiot a lot of the time, but his heart is in the right place. If you've seen him in the movies, which I'm sure most of you have, you know what you're getting here. A likable but silly man on a journey to better himself. His chemistry with Knuckles, who is once again brilliantly performed by Idris Elba, is solid and the two characters work better together than I expected. The insecure, weak Wade being trained by a confident, strong Knuckles pair together surprisingly well. Finally, in an unexpected surprise, we have the ghost of the chief of Knuckles' tribe, Pachacamac, and he is voiced by Christopher Lloyd. Although the character is very different from the brutal warlord depicted in Sonic Adventure and its various adaptations, I found Pachacamac to be hugely entertaining and very funny whenever he was on screen. This version of the character is basically a senile old man, struggling to grasp the mechanics of being a ghost. Sure, he's completely different from the quite brutal character from the games, but I'd put that more down to the character's age and him losing his marbles. Christopher Lloyd is brilliant in this role, and I hope the character shows up again sometime. While we're on the subject of humor, let's talk the comedy for a moment. So many of the jokes landed for me in this show, and I possibly laughed more in this show than either of the movies, maybe? But a lot of the time, I was laughing in absolute disbelief at the baffling events unfolding before my eyes. I don't think it's what I was looking for when I went into this show, but I can't deny it was often massively entertaining. Although I'm still not sure if it was entertaining for the right reasons, if that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't, but look at the material I'm reviewing here. Let me give you an example. In episode 4, we learn Knuckles' backstory through a hilarious, low-budget rock opera sequence hosted by Pachacamac, with Wade taking on the role of Knuckles. The whole thing is very funny and very creative in how it adapts iconic imagery from past Sonic games into a live-action stage performance. I laughed throughout, like I had tears in my eyes. But I can't help but think of how much cooler it would have been if we'd seen these events unfold with proper flashback sequences. I feel we were robbed of something really cool here. Also, I know I said a lot of the jokes land, and they do, but there was definitely other times, for example, Wade getting bullied by a child at the start, or any scene involving his sister, where the humor fell completely flat for me, and it went pretty far into cringe territory. A real mixed bag, but with a lot more jokes landing than not overall, I'd say. And actually going back to that girl at the start, when Jack's response is for Wade to crush her skull and destroy her, yeah, that was pretty funny. When it comes to the action, all the fight scenes in the show were really well done. Anytime Knuckles is fighting, whether it's bounty hunters in Wade's mother's kitchen, Gun in the bowling alley, or the big last boss in his machine at the end, it looks great. From memory, there were a couple of episodes without any action really, if I recall correctly, which I'll use to segue into the show's pacing here. Let's discuss it. Apart from one glaring exception that I'll talk about in a moment, the pacing was mostly okay. When there was a lack of action sequences in an episode, I didn't find that they suffered for it. They were still sufficiently entertaining, and they kept me smiling throughout. After all, these are just 6 sub-30-minute episodes, short and to the point. That one exception I mentioned was episode 3, which was entirely set in Wade's mother's house, and featured a lengthy scene at the dinner table with Wade and his sister bickering. She even stabs him with a fork at one point, completely unprovoked, which is a totally normal way to behave and not a red flag at all for someone who's supposedly in the FBI. Anyway, this scene is so boring and embarrassing to watch that I can't believe it made it into the final cut of the episode in its current form. It really seemed to go on forever, and it was an absolute chore to get through. Like, if I wasn't a big Sonic fan, if this wasn't a Knuckles show, like if it was just something I was watching to give it a chance, this may have been the cut-off point for me. I may have tuned out. But post-dinner scene, I found the episode picked up a bit, and it ended pretty strong, with a big fight scene in the kitchen that was pretty funny. This was the only pacing bump in the series for me, but make no mistake, to me, it was a big one. The series unsurprisingly concludes with a bowling tournament, followed by a short but awesome fight with Knuckles. Although a climactic bowling tournament was not something I expected from a Knuckles series at all, I can't deny that it was very funny. It kind of had dodgeball or basketball vibes almost, and the commentators in particular were hilarious here. Proper big laughs to be had, if your sense of humor matches mine, I guess. Then after a fight scene, the show promptly concludes. No return to Green Hills, no more Sonic and Tails, no tease for Sonic 3 or future characters. Nothing. The end. Overall, I'd say I had a good time with Knuckles, but for me personally, it's not quite what I wanted it to be. Nor was it quite what I expected it to be based on the press releases and information beforehand. I was prepared for a grounded, low-stakes story of Knuckles training Wade, but it definitely went far sillier and more cartoonish than I was expecting. Much more so than either movie. I'm so conflicted on it. It also feels like it took the wrong lessons from Sonic 2, which leaned further into the games and focused on more of the Sonic cast rather than the humans. And then this show went and did a complete 180, going back to a human focus with minimal nods to the games. Like, there's a ski resort called Ice Cap Resort, and there's the Rock Opera, and Knuckles runs past a goal sign he's constructed near the start. There's little Easter eggs, but this ain't it, Paramount. This ain't enough. The music is once again licensed pop songs for most part, which work fine, but it's still baffling that Paramount remains so reluctant to tap into the vault of effing bangers from the video game soundtracks that they could use in these adaptations. So as I try to wrap my head around this, and as much as I had a good time with Knuckles, I guess to me it also really highlighted how crucial Sonic movie writers Pat Casey and Josh Miller are, as well as the series director Jeff Fowler, who only directed the first episode of Knuckles, how crucial they all are to the success of the Sonic movies, and how I really look forward to them getting the keys back for Sonic Movie 3 in December. Knuckles the series is a mostly harmless side quest, completely optional viewing, and it doesn't quite do anything to fundamentally damage the Sonic cinematic universe, thankfully. But with some of the sillier stuff, it does come close at times. And if this is the kind of stuff Paramount are happy to put out, they do risk potentially damaging the Sonic movie brand at some point, since they seem to be planning on more and more of these spin-offs going forward. If it sounds like I'm contradicting myself here, or that I'm confused at some points in this review, it's because I genuinely am. What I said at the start of this review remains the same as I conclude. I've never felt so conflicted after consuming a Sonic product as I have with Knuckles. Despite talking about this for some time now, I somehow also feel completely lost for words at what I've witnessed. Did I enjoy it? Absolutely. It was bonkers. Is it what I thought it would be? No, not at all. Is it the approach I think they should have taken for it? No, not at all. But I had fun with it. Thank you so much for watching this video. What did you think about Knuckles on Paramount Plus? Let me know in the comments below, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you're new here. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.